Echoes of Green Steel Episode 1. Ethan, a whirlwind of nervous energy disguised in a worn hoodie, navigated the bustling university campus. His family, titans in the steel industry, wouldn't recognize him. Ethan, by choice, lived on a shoestring, a rebellion against the stifling expectations. Here, he was just another face, surviving on instant ramen and late-night library sessions. His low profile, however, didn't shield him from the venomous Brandon, a fellow student who thrived on making Ethan's life miserable. Brandon, the epitome of entitlement, reveled in Ethan's threadbare clothes and packed lunches. The bullying took its toll, eroding Ethan's confidence. Yet, his spirit refused to be completely broken. One day, a flyer advertising a student debate caught his eye. Environmental sustainability, the topic, sparked a fire within him. He poured his heart into researching, fueled by a desire to prove himself, not just to Brandon, but to himself. The night of the debate, Ethan, a nervous tremor in his voice, stepped onto the stage. As he spoke, his passion rose above the tremor. He spoke of a future where industry and environment coexisted, a future his family's business could be a part of. The applause that thundered at the end wasn't just for his victory, but for the spark he'd reignited within himself. His win caught the attention of Professor Sharma, a renowned environmental scientist. She saw a fire in Ethan, a raw potential waiting to be nurtured. Professor Sharma offered him an internship, a chance to bridge the gap between theory and practice. This internship led him on field trips, face-to-face, with the devastating effects of unchecked industrial waste. One day, a call came from his estranged father. The family business was on the brink of collapse, their practices finally catching up to them. Ethan, conflicted, saw this as a turning point. He could walk away or use this opportunity to make a difference from the inside. He returned home, not as the prodigal son, but as a force of change. He challenged the old ways, pushing for sustainable practices with the same fervor he'd shown in the debate. It wasn't easy, years of ingrained habits died hard. But Ethan, fueled by his experiences and Professor Sharma's guidance, persevered slowly. The company began to change. Greener practices were implemented, waste reduced, and the company, once on the brink, found new life. Brandon, seeing Ethan's success on a news report, slunk away, his power to bully diminished. Ethan, the once nervous freshman living on ramen, stood tall. He wasn't just rich anymore. He was a leader, an innovator, someone who'd used his fire to forge a brighter future, not just for his family's business, but for the environment as well. He'd found his place, not by hiding his past, but by using it to fuel his journey. Episode 2, Steel and Sustainability. Ethan stormed back into his hometown, a city choked by the relentless smoke of the very industry his family dominated. The once grand manor felt like a gilded cage, the air thick with tension. His father, a hardened titan of steel, greeted him with a mixture of disappointment and grudging respect. "You think you can waltz in here and fix everything with a few green speeches?" His father boomed, a tremor shaking the crystal chandelier. Ethan stood his ground, the university debates hardening his resolve. "This isn't a speech, Dad, it's survival. We either adapt or go under," his father scoffed. "Adapting costs money." "Money we don't have," Ethan countered. "Professor Sharma has a plan. We can implement greener practices, reduce waste, and tap into a growing market for sustainable steel." His words hung heavy in the air. Ethan knew it wouldn't be easy. The old guard, men who'd built the company on the back of ruthless efficiency, wouldn't surrender their power easily. Meanwhile, Brandon, Ethan's nemesis from university, reveled in his return. He saw it as a chance to exploit the family tension, whispering poison into the ears of his father, a board member at Ethan's company. Brandon, desperate to protect his own privileged lifestyle, fueled the skepticism towards Ethan's ideas. Ethan, undeterred, started small. He rallied the younger engineers, inspiring them with a vision of a future-proof company. Together, they brainstormed new ideas, their excitement a stark contrast to the cynicism of the old guard. His first victory came during a board meeting. Armed with data from Professor Sharma's research, Ethan presented a case for upgrading the outdated filtration system. It would be costly, but the long-term savings and environmental benefits were undeniable. The room remained silent. Then, to Ethan's surprise, it was Mr. Chen, a veteran engineer, who spoke. "The boys got a point. We can't keep burying our heads in the sand." One by one, others followed suit. The tide was turning, but Ethan knew this was just the first skirmish. He still had to prove that his ideas wouldn't just save the environment, but also the company's bottom line. Meanwhile, Professor Sharma, impressed by Ethan's progress, put him in touch with potential investors interested in supporting sustainable businesses. This was a game changer. With external funding, Ethan could push for a bigger green initiative. But as Ethan celebrated this small victory, reality struck. A news report showed a protest brewing outside the factory, a mix of disgruntled workers worried about job losses and environmental activists demanding stricter regulations. Ethan stared at the screen, a knot of whirring building in his stomach. He knew this was just the beginning. The battle for the future of the company, and his own future within it, had just gotten real. Episode 3, Divided Loyalties. Ethan woke to the sound of angry chants echoing through the city. Stepping onto the balcony, he saw a sea of protesters gathered outside the factory gates. Disgruntled workers, their faces grim, held signs demanding job security. On the other side, environmental activists, their voices passionate, called for cleaner practices. Ethan felt trapped between two worlds. He understood the workers' fear. Green initiatives, however well-intentioned, could lead to job cuts. But he also knew the status quo was unsustainable. The factory was polluting the very city that housed his family and employees. He headed straight to the conference room, where a tense meeting with union representatives was underway. Mr. Lee, a burly man with calloused hands, addressed Ethan, his voice laced with bitterness. "We built this company with our sweat and blood, and now you want to throw us out on the street." Ethan met his gaze. "No one is losing their jobs, Mr. Lee. We're changing, evolving." "But change doesn't come without its challenges," he explained Professor Sharma's plan for retraining programs, reskilling workers for the new technologies needed for green steel production. It wouldn't be easy, but it offered a path forward. Mr. Lee remained unconvinced. Brandon, lurking at the back of the room, fueled the skepticism with whispers about lost wages and uncertain futures. Later that day, Ethan met with the environmental activists. Maya, a young woman with fiery determination, led the group. "Green initiatives are all well and good," she said, "but actions speak louder than words." Ethan outlined the planned upgrades to the filtration system and the ongoing research into eco-friendly alternatives. He shared Professor Sharma's optimistic projections about cleaner production and a possible expansion into green building materials. Maya listened intently, a flicker of hope entering her eyes. However, trust was a fragile thing. Many in the group had witnessed years of empty promises and environmental negligence by the company. Meanwhile, Ethan faced opposition from within the company. The older generation of executives, led by Brandon's father, Mr. Miller, clung to the old ways. They saw environmental regulations as unnecessary burdens on profitability. Ethan felt himself caught in a tug-of-war. He needed the workers on board for a successful transition, but the activists held him accountable for past actions. The old guard within the company, blinded by short-term gains, threatened to sabotage his plans. That night, overwhelmed with the pressure, Ethan sought solace in Professor Sharma's office. She listened patiently as he poured his heart out. "Change is messy, Ethan," she said gently, "but it's also necessary. Focus on the common ground. Show both sides that a sustainable future can be prosperous for everyone." Her words resonated with Ethan. He realized he needed a win, a symbol of commitment to both sides. He reached out to a local engineering school, proposing a collaboration to develop new green technologies within the company. The dean of the school, impressed by Ethan's sincerity, readily agreed. It was a small step, but it was a start, a bridge between the company and the future it was striving to build. Ethan knew the real fight was far from over. But with a renewed sense of purpose, he was determined to navigate the treacherous waters, forging a path for the company, the environment, and the people who depended on both.